In the news this week, a protest looms over the decision to move juvenile detainees to a maximum security prison. An exclusive interview coming up.
Also tonight, tributes to Tricia as Perth locals joined the memorial walk remembering WA's favourite elephant. Health workers threaten to walk off the job as demands grow for a rise in pay. And later, Dr. Andrew Miller's comment.
This is The Evening News with Ivan Loom and Maliva Thorne.
Good evening. A major protest will be held in the city following the McGowan government's controversial decision to move a group of difficult juvenile detainees from Banksia Hill to Casuarina Prison. The youngest juvenile to be sent to the maximum security adult prison is only 14 years old. Megan Cracker is the leader and organiser of the protest and joins us exclusively this week before the rally. Megan, thanks for joining us. What are you hoping to achieve in this protest?
The injustice of the children at Banksia Hill that are being moved to Casuarina Prison. It's an injustice that's happening right now, and basically we need to bring it to the forefront by taking the streets. Advocacy is occurring right across the Western Australia at all levels, and now we need to take it to the streets to basically say this is outrageous, it's a disgusting decision and there are better ways of doing things.
Okay, so how many people are expected to attend the protest?
We have the support from Amnesty International, lobbyist groups, activist groups. A lot of people have been coming forward and basically expressing their interest to help and support. So there could be 10 people, there could be 100 people, there could be 500 people, there could be 1,000 people, I'm not sure. What I do know is that there's a lot of interest in this particular area right now, in particular to the treatment of Indigenous and children in general. This is an abomination of the prison system, and in fact Department of Corrective Services, Department of the Attorney General, the Minister for Corrective Services and in fact the McGowan government treat children in ways that you would treat your own children. Adult prison, particularly Casuarina, which is the worst of the worst. It's a maximum security prison. That is not a place for children to be housed. Children were moved in 2013, taken to Hakea Prison. I've spoken to many children as part of the class action who were part of that system. They had interaction with adult people in the prison system. So basically to say that there will be no contact, that's really quite outrageous, and let's see what happens.
Well, I got you here. Are you confident that your demands will be heard? And if it doesn't, what's next from here?
There's a lot of advocacy going on at all levels, local, state, in the parliament, a lot of lobbyist groups, activist groups and so forth. Now, if they're going to have 100 children out there, they need to have 100 nurturers. That's the reality. They need to provide that intense psychosocial support 24/7. Now, let's remember this, $1.8 million has been the figure that's been quoted in terms of repairs to that particular place right now, Banksia Hill. We'd worked out there, myself, Jerry Georgiadis and Connie, for hardly anything, $50,000 over an 8-week period. We reduced the incarceration rate of them young girls. We brought calmness into that particular prison and there was less staff incidences. So what the government really need to do is focus in on things that work. And by not focusing on things that work, well, the place is going to continue to be destroyed and continue to be damaged until such time that they put in preventative measures of programs that do work. That's the reality. It is about that intense psychosocial support, the assertive outreach of 24/7. That is very much needed. The children, they need to be loved and cared for. It's like this. You hate, if you spread hate, you receive hate. You spread love, you receive love. That's what's missing from Banksia Hill.
And we look forward to covering the rally this coming week. Megan, thanks for your time.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Perth Zoo's most famous resident is set to leave a lasting legacy. WA is in mourning after the death of Tricia the elephant. Tricia passed away surrounded by her carers this week after living in Perth for 60 years and touching the hearts of generations. Nelson Liu reports.
Hayley is a fan of Tricia the elephant, but now there's nothing but tears and sadness for the Great Dane.
Oh, very, very sad.
The 5-year-old girl has been left upset by the elephant's passing, that she wanted to make a tribute to the Perth Zoo matriarch.
One of them was painted glittery and grey, and while the other was rainbow and had really cute eyes.
Words on the back, nothing but love for Tricia.
And she wrote on the back that she loved Tricia and I hope you're happy in elephant heaven, she said.
The 65-year-old Asian elephant passed away on Wednesday evening, surrounded by zookeepers and her carers, succumbing to age, her ailing health giving them a final chance to savour her presence.
It was a gentle end for a very gentle, grand dame of the zoo. She was a victim of age. She lived a very, very long time.
Tricia arrived at Perth Zoo from Vietnam nearly 60 years ago, the zoo's original concrete enclosure her home, but later transformed into a home fit for an elephant and her personality. She left her mark on visitors with her playfulness, cheekiness and artistic talent, as she became friends with staff and the public. This is the enclosure that Tricia has been living in since her arrival in Perth back in 1963. As you can see, it is now closed to the public to allow the other elephants to grieve. A memorial has been held for Tricia at Perth Zoo, Premier Mark McGowan joining with visitors to remember the joy she brought to many.
When I first arrived in Perth, I remember coming to the zoo maybe 30 years ago and seeing her. I think she was being walked around by a keeper, and everyone seemed to know who she was. So it was quite remarkable how she got into the hearts and minds of West Australians in a way I haven't seen before.
Her legacy also remembered through a conservation fund in her name to help protect elephants in Sumatra.
Tricia, again, will live on in terms of her legacy and her contribution to her species in the wild.
Tricia is the oldest elephant to be cared for by a zoo in Australasia, and for many who loved her, she'll be remembered with 6 decades of memories.
She was a grand lady and very, very gentle, absolutely lovely.
Nelson Liu, WAMN News.
And the memorial walk for elephant Tricia went underway today at Perth Zoo. Luke Derrick was there this morning. Luke, the turnout has been significant.
Yes, Ivan. Tricia's memorial walk opened this morning, honouring Perth's much-beloved elephant. Many people came through to honour her today, including Premier Mark McGowan and Environment Minister Rhys Whitby. Many have also signed her remembrance book, writing their favourite memories of the animal throughout her life. We spoke to Steve just before, who'd been Tricia's carer for 21 years, and he told us of how caring and gentle she had been and of how much she will be missed.
Probably the hardest time was that once we had set a date and then you know, going out and spending time with her, cuddling, and that was really hard. Then, yeah, obviously that, yeah, you sort of counting the days down and the hours, and thankfully everything went as well as it could. You know, as being as sad as it was, you know, everything sort of went as nice as it possibly could. So that was nice. Once it sort of was over, it did feel a bit of a relief that, you know, we'd done what we could, what we thought was the right thing for her.
And surely she will be missed by everyone. Back to you, Melly.
Thanks, Luke. Unions have warned the McGowan government there is no excuse not to raise public sector wages, as health workers threaten to strike if there's no pay increase. Hundreds of WA health workers joined other public servants outside Perth Children's Hospital this week, calling for an annual pay rise higher than 2.75% in WA's public sector wages policy. Unions say it's time the government recognises the work of public sector workers and that they won't stop until they get a fair deal.
We don't see the cost of living pressures going down anytime soon. The Reserve Bank Governor is saying that they will continue and possibly get worse before they get better. We know that inflation is also on the rise. So we need to see our members paid enough so that they can pay their bills and keep up with the cost of living. And that's more than they should get, given the years of budget repair that they've contributed to and the incredible value they have as public health workers.
Mortgage brokers are advising borrowers to consider their options to mitigate rising costs, warning the Reserve Bank of Australia's interest rate hike will hit home buyers. Advisor says mortgage holders will be affected by the RBA's Tuesday rate rise by 50 basis points to 1.35%, with households expected to struggle with mortgage payments and living expenses. Mortgage brokers says there are things can be done to reduce the pressure, but borrowers should seek advice.
In order to mitigate the negative impact of an interest rate rise or increasing cost of living, you have pointed out one of the things that both of us, we have mentioned to our clients as well quite often, which is to review your interest rate, speak to your local branch, speak to your bankers, speak to your brokers like ourselves, just to find out whether there's any better options out there.
Consumer Protection is advising travellers to consider their rights if they are being prevented from securing a refund following flight cancellations or long delays. The department said consumers needed to know what remedies are available to them when flights did not go ahead following unexpected travel circumstances. So far in 2022, 193 complaints have been made by WA consumers, with most involving an airline's refusal to offer a refund or credit. Under consumer law, airlines must provide travel services within a reasonable time, and consumers may be entitled to a replacement flight or refund if the flight is cancelled or delayed for a long time. However, an airline's obligations may not apply if the reasons are outside of their control, including weather.
This week on the WAMN Extra News Club, we continue our feature story on juvenile detention after the McGowan government's decision to transfer difficult youths to Casuarina prison. Reporter Nelson Liu features his extended writing on the matter.
Some of the children in Banksia Hill, there's been stories of being locked down for 23 hours a day. So that begs the question, if placed and when placed in Casuarina prison, will some of these children be able to have the recreational opportunities? Will they ensure that the children are being given the opportunities in terms of education, the psychological services and the treatment and so forth? What's happened, this is absolutely catastrophic, and there's much devastation in our community because we're worried about these children. Now these children, we must remember, 40% are in the care of the Department of Child Protection. That's a fail.
You can read all that and more on the WAMN Extra News Club. Subscribe via the link in the description and support independent local journalism.
We'll be following that story more closely next week, so don't forget to tune in.
That's right. And now here's AMAWA spokesman Dr. Andrew Miller with his weekly COVID-19 update and medical commentary.
Hi, thanks for your time. Seeing a bit of a mood swing in the approach to COVID across the country at the moment, as authorities are signalling that their plans to remove all protections are not going to be feasible for winter. So what is coming is, again, a tightening, particularly in the area of recommendation of the use of masks, in my view, that's what will happen. This is because the case numbers are now predictably starting to rocket up with BA4-5 around, and that's the case numbers even with the small amount of testing that is officially being done. So while we're seeing 30,000 cases a day across the country, it's probably a lot more than that, I think, as we would all be aware at the moment. We're also seeing hospitalisations increase, and that's probably the most worrying figure at the moment for the authorities. It's gone from 3,300 around the country to 4,100 just in the last week or so, and that is just another extra major tertiary metropolitan hospital full of very sick COVID patients. Deaths are still rolling along at about the same rate, but we would expect that will go up in the next couple of weeks because that lags behind the hospitalisations, which lags behind the cases. So what went wrong with just removing all of the protections and thinking this would become like a cold or a flu? Well, it's never going to be a cold or a flu. It's not an endemic disease. It's an epidemic disease that goes through in waves, and each variant has an advantage over the previous one because it can evade the vaccination, and because it's been a longer time since people have had their last booster. And that's why we've seen a target swing around and say, well, we need to get the fourth booster now into people over 50, and we'll make it open for people over 30 at this stage. And that's the first time they've sort of had an optional section in the vaccination, and it's a good thing to do, so that people can take a bit of control of their own destiny and realise that this idea of just getting vaccinated occasionally, not wearing a mask and being reinfected every few months basically is just not a good plan for their future health, because we know that with each dose of COVID, your chances of getting long COVID symptoms, the things like months of fatigue and shortness of breath, is increased. And we don't yet know what many infections could possibly cause, but we do know that this is a disease that attacks many parts of the body. And even if you have a mild course of COVID or so, it seems, we don't know what other damage it's doing to your body systems in that time. So prevention better than cure, back to your grandma's sort of way of thinking about medicine, which was a pretty wise one. And that kind of handed down tradition of avoiding disease where possible has come about through thousands of years of living with viruses that cause problems in human communities. So I'm still masking up whenever I go indoors in public. I try to avoid crowded indoor restaurant locations, instead prefer to take one of the many al fresco options that are pretty good if you wear a jacket in winter, in my view, and you still live a very good life just by taking pretty basic precautions of always trying to breathe clean air and avoiding people who are sick. So stay safe out there. Recognise that this is a long way from being over yet, but if we look after one another and we just apply a bit of common sense to it all, then for the most part we'll be fine. Thanks for your time.
And that was Dr. Andrew Miller. Now here is Leo with what's coming up on 6 News tonight.
Thanks guys, today on 6 News, assassination fallout continues after former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was shot dead during a campaign rally. Plus, only a matter of time, former Home Affairs Minister Karen Andrews warns of possible future assassination attempts in Australia following the killing of Japan's ex-PM. We look into the history of such attempts in Australia. And the campaign to replace Boris Johnson ramps up, but it could take weeks, possibly months, to find a new Conservative Party leader that will take over from the now caretaker British PM, as calls for an early election in the UK continue. You can see full details on those stories and plenty more by heading to our website 6newsau.com. For now though guys, it's back to you.
Thanks, Leo. And that's our weekly news and current affairs. We have the latest news on our website, wamnnews.com.au.
Don't forget to subscribe to the WAMN Extra News Club so we can continue our work in the community. Full details on wamnnews.com.au/news/extra. From Melly and myself, we wish you good health, good night. See you next Sunday.
Thanks for watching.